Welcome everyone to the City of Edmonton Election Forum for Ward 7. Thanks both to those our live audience for coming this evening and as well those who will be participating online. My name is Wendy Hassan and I have the honor of being your third-party moderator this evening. And we look forward to 2 hours full of information exchange, which we hope will be of great value to both our candidates and the constituents of Ward 7. Before we get into the plans for this evening, let's take a moment to recognize the traditional land on which we are gathered today, which is the territory of the Treaty 6 First Nations and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Zone 4. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries. A few housekeeping matters to start with. You will have noticed this event is webcast live. We have cameras over there, and a recording will be posted online in the next few days, in case you want to see this twice. We have American Sign Language interpreters. Welcome, Tracy and Aaron. And real-time captioning is also provided, compliments of Corey. Please put your cell phones on silent during the proceedings, and no smoking is allowed in the facilities. Posting of campaign signs, including handheld signs, is not permitted. And washrooms, if you need them, are located down the door in the rear. If you go down the hallway, and they are on the right. Men's or boys, actually, it's an elementary school. And then further down the hall will be girls. In case of emergency, we do have 2 exits, one over here to my right, and then one when you came in the entranceway, that will be the other exit in case of emergency. So how will this evening work? The goal of this forum is to provide equal and fair opportunity for the candidates to share their views so the constituents of Ward 7 can learn more about your candidates and for the candidates to respond to as many audience questions as possible within the time we have available tonight. So here is our plan. First, we'll hear from each candidate. They will have 5 minutes to make some opening comments. Next, we'll start a question and answer session. At about 8 o'clock, we're going to take a brief 10-minute intermission. Then we'll continue our question and answer session until about 8:45. I'll explain a little bit more about how the Q&A will work shortly. Closing comments will be made by each candidate. They have 1 minute each, and then a 20-minute session of meet and greet with your candidates so you can mix and mingle with your candidates until about 9:20, and then we'd ask you to proceed because the building needs to be shut at 9:30. So, what's my role? The moderator. My job is to facilitate this plan that I just explained for this evening. I'm going to help both candidates and our audience keep to time and support you in posing and responding to questions. My job is to keep this as fair, respectful, and enjoyable as possible for everyone. To do that, I'm asking for your help and cooperation. Here are a few guidelines we'd ask everyone, candidates and audience, to honor. Please respect the speaker. Avoid interrupting when candidates or questioners are speaking. Communicate your messages as clearly and respectfully as possible. Please avoid comments that are offensive, discriminatory, or attack people personally. If that happens, I will intervene. For example, I may not allow a question to be responded to, or I may ask someone to rephrase it, or I may move on to the next question. Please respect the plan for tonight. This forum is not designed as a debate. It's either between candidates or between candidates and the voters. Candidates are asked to share their ideas and positions only. One-on-one interactions between candidates and voters will happen after our formal session is concluded at around 9 o'clock. And if there is a question about process, please direct it to me and I'll do my very best to resolve it. So, this is how the question and answer session will work. Each person, you can see a microphone here in the middle of the session, And everyone who approaches the mic will have 30 seconds to state their question. And this is so we can have as many questions as possible. We know, given time we may not be able to have everybody have a chance to answer a question or pose a question, rather. And so we'd like to allow as many of the folks as we can to be able to pose them. If you hear a chime after 30 seconds and you're the questioner at the mic, then that's your time to no more explanation, and please proceed to ask the question. In the interest of fairness, we will give every candidate an opportunity to respond to every question. Each candidate will have a minute to do that, and they will take turns being first. So I will be inviting them to respond in a rotating way to every new question. And as I said, at about 8 o'clock, we will have intermission. At that time, we'll be taking some questions from Twitter. And so after the intermission, I'll start with a Twitter question. We'll take 3 from the audience, and then another Twitter question, and so on until our time for questions is finished. And again, this forum provides an opportunity for candidates to state their views and an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. If a question remains unclear, I will either quickly try to help clarify it, or if that's not possible, move on to the next question. For our audience, just a few tips for how to ask a great question. Focus on issues relevant to municipal government. For example, questions about the voting process or voting could be asked at the Edmonton elections desk, and Karen, you can see her at the back door there, has a desk with lots of wonderful information for you. Please frame your question so all candidates may respond. Even if a question is directed to one candidate, in the interest of fairness, I will be inviting all other candidates to respond as well. Please be as clear and concise as possible so everyone in the room and online can understand. And sometimes it helps to write your question down first. It may also help to, when you come to the mic, state your topic. I have a question about bike lanes. Provide 1 or 2 sentences if you need to, just to clarify, provide context, and then close with stating your question. Again, this is to provide a better chance for more people to have their questions heard. I'll be encouraging you to keep to the 30 seconds. And you'll have that little chime to remind you too. So, that's the program for tonight. So now that we know that what's going on and how the evening will unfold, I'd like you to join me in a round of applause for our candidates. Candidate Andreychuk, could you please start?
Thank you, and good evening to those who are tuning in from home. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. I'm a husband, I'm a father. Catherine and I are raising our growing family here in Ward 7. Claire, our 2-year-old, is home with a sitter right now. You're welcome. And we're expecting a little boy right after the election this November. This is our home. This is where we've set roots, and we've been for the past 10 years. But my connection to this part of Edmonton goes back quite a bit further than that. My grandpa lived in Newton. I remember going to Take 5. I remember attending Our Lady of Fatima Church. I got my first social work position in Northmount nearly 2 decades ago. I worked in a group home with young men with developmental disabilities. Ward 7 is so important to me. It's an area that I am both proud and truly protective of. I've taken an unpaid leave in order to run in this election, but I am the city supervisor of community safety. I co-manage crime prevention teams that bring together policing, social work, and youth work expertise to tackle the issues of crime and disorder that are faced by Edmonton neighborhoods. I'm also responsible for project management and leadership related to some of the big crime issues our city is facing, issues like child sexual exploitation. Prior to management, I spent 5 years working along 118th Avenue in partnership with the Edmonton Police. Now, during this time, we focused mostly on reducing residential break-and-enters and assaults, but we also initiated some projects you might be familiar with. We Believe in 118, which is a project where we partnered with local business and we nearly eliminated the sale of weapons and drug paraphernalia down 118th Ave. Dear John, which targeted street-level prostitution, and The Spoke, which was a program that was meant to engage youth and to prevent recruitment by gangs. We took at-risk youth, paired them with mentors from the community, and they learned bicycle mechanic skills. This has been a wildly successful program. We've graduated hundreds of youth, and it's still alive and well in our community. My entire career has focused on making Edmonton, and specifically Northeast Edmonton, safer and more connected. My commitment to you, when elected this October, will be to push hard for the best possible redevelopment of the Northland site. The neighborhoods that surrounded Northlands deserved a plan before the lights were turned off. This will impact crime, and frankly, I feel we have enough already. This will impact our property values. There's a report that's available at the back of the room that suggests, it's a third-party report that suggests a projected $13,000 to $27,000 impact per household within a 1-mile radius of the Northland site. And this is going to impact the overall revitalization of our community. The last thing we need is another mass vacant lot in our community's inventory. My second commitment will be to tackle problem properties. Now, every candidate up here will agree with me that this has been a thorn in our community's side for far too long, but I am the only candidate to put forward a plan that is innovative and a plan that will turn the tide on this problem in our community. Specifics related to both of these priorities are available at the back on info sheets. I suggest that you take a look or chat with me at the intermission. So why me? I live in the community, and I am so hungry. I have the commitment, the passion, and the expertise needed for the road ahead. The decisions made over the next 4 years will shape our community for generations. I would be honored if you entrusted me to work with you to help shape this together. Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. This is such a critical conversation for our community.
Thank you. Candidate Katarina.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this forum. Certainly appreciate such a large crowd and the interest that Ward 7 shows in our municipality. Over the years, the residents of Ward 7 have accepted increased developments of social and non-market housing in the area. It's time these projects are distributed evenly across other parts of the city. Ward 7's continued focus should be on projects that will bring a positive change to our community. Projects like the Yellowhead Free Flow, Alleyway Renewal Program starting in 2019, and continued revitalization of our mature neighborhoods, which we have seen many neighborhoods in Ward 7 have the work done and will continue to do. Right now we're working on Mount Rose, and next year we'll be starting on, I believe it's Santa Rosa, and in 2019 Highlands is on the schedule for their renewal. I know that to get what you want, you have to ask for it, and you have to make a strong case. The system can be made to work by the people who care for their community and don't give up. And many of the things that have happened in Ward 7 has been community-led, and without the cooperation and the help of communities, the job would be even that much more difficult. So I want to thank you, all of you who have continue to support the initiatives that go on in Ward 7. As your councillor for the last 3 terms, I'll continue to get things done. As an experienced 3-term councillor, businessman, and volunteer, I have a reputation for producing results, such as the Kathleen Andrews Transit Garage project coming forward on Fort Road, and that took a number of years to move the Westwood Garage to that site, a site that had been vacant for 3 decades. The renewal of O'Leary and East Glen pools, Borden Park renewal, which will be complete this summer with the pool area. In support of the Alberta Avenue, Beverly, and the Fort Road business improvement areas, I've worked hard to bring about positive change and spark community spirit, and I want to thank you again for the overwhelming support that I've received these last 3 terms. I will continue to improve policing and decrease crime, including graffiti, increase LRT security, especially at Coliseum and Stadium stations, and both stations now are under an area redevelopment plan, and both have received additional funding for peace officers, and the pilot program that was introduced by EPS has been adopted as a permanent program with 10 EPS service members riding the trains with our peace officers. Preserve our community values and aspirations by closely examining rezoning, and we've seen a lot of concern over infill, lot splitting, and I take that extremely serious. And a good example of that, Viewpoint, that many of you know, had an application to split one of their lots, the old Joe Clark home. That, with the work of the community, we managed to have that lot split denied by the city. And because of the fact that we are working on the stadium area redevelopment plan and the Coliseum redevelopment plan, everything has to fit together. I will support the neighborhood renewal programs that we have now. I'll work towards Coliseum and station revitalization, and both stations will be revitalized. They were built 40 years ago. We're extremely proud in Ward 7 that we actually had the first LRT system in the city, proven ridership, and it's time, and I've been advocating for this for a number of years, that we spend as much time and concerted effort for the renewal of our older stations, not just building new ones. And supporting and maintaining the character of our mature neighborhoods. Everyone decides on where they'd like to live, and they decide for all sorts of different reasons, whether it's schools, whether it's maturity of the neighborhood, whether it's closeness to amenities, to work. And once that decision is made, it causes an awful lot of angst for people when those neighborhoods start to change for different reasons. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Good evening, everybody. And my name is Andrzej Andy Gudanowski. Right now I'm using Andy because I promised myself I will teach everybody, member of all my community, how to spell properly my name, the first one, which Daddy gave me, when I do tremendous job for the community. So I am the probably one here who is high school graduate. I have a post-secondary, a lot of law enforcement courses, and medical courses and maritime courses. I worked a couple of years on the ship, Canadian ship, till the company started replacing Canadian seamen for foreign workers. I would like to also underline, yes, I have an accent, a little bit different accent. Yes, I speak different language also. I speak Polish. And like I mentioned, everybody in front of the house, probably, which I passed today in the morning, 21,000 houses by myself. I saw 34,000 faces. I started campaign close to 2 years ago, when I find out our community has 70,000 people and 46,000 eligible voters. What I can say also, no, I'm father like my colleague here. I have in my home 5 women to take care. So I see there's a lot of women here. I know sometimes what you have under your heart. When you live with women, you learn a lot of. What I can say also, if I am elected this year, my dream is to create community, unique community, so other community across Canada can dream about it. And I know how to do it. My experience in life, I'm former candidate from 2013. I ran downtown. Scott McKean succeeded me. I was 12, too many candidates. I already started working on program, 2013. I finished this year. Take me almost 1 year to complete program for the city of Edmonton and for my community, Ward 7. In my program, you find practically every part of your life. I mention family life. I mention how supposed to police forces work. I mention what we're supposed to eat well, why some older people don't have money, and when so many our neighborhood poor. Surprised, when you're passing so many thousand houses, you're surprised why we have poverty in our community. We are Canadian. We're supposed to live wonderfully, you know. So I just want to tell you, if I'm elected, I bring to the community happiness, hope. I bring friendship. If I'm elected, probably when I look for election from the previous years, I will be the best community daddy in community history. My personal phone, first time in history of Edmonton, will be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 4 years. I won't competing with 9/11. Anytime we have something in the heart, you can call anytime. Some people need help during the nighttime. Some people by day. That's why we city councils, community daddy, we're supposed to be with them, with our kids, anytime, any moment of our terms in office. Thank you.
Candidate John West.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. As it's mentioned, my name is Liz John West, and I'm seeking to be your next city councilor. I'm running for city council because I want to make our city a vibrant place for all of us to live, play, and work in. As a longtime resident of the ward, I have a keen sense of priorities and concerns for our changing city. As a 30-year advocate in the social work field, I have skills needed to advocate for the needs of our neighborhoods. As a manager of numerous programs, I have experience working with board of directors. I have led organizations through difficult changes, facilitated new programs, and promoted good governance. Building strong relationships, supporting community engagement are all central to my work. I have managed a staff team of 35 and have been responsible for a budget of $5 million. As an owner of a small family business, we have been involved in revitalizing our neighborhood by buying rooming houses, derelict homes, and renovating them back to single-family homes, which is bringing young families back into our neighborhoods. One of the challenges in owning a business is dealing with the planning department, with the city. We have experienced frustrations on numerous occasions where wrong information about building permits were given, holding up projects for several months. Community service is a central part of my life, and I have worked hard on it. The revitalization of Giovanni Caboto Park. I, with Ron Barazan, the urban farmer, and Teresa Spinelli, the owner of the Italian Center, led this initiative. We work closely with the city to see our vision of an inner city park be a hub of community gathering for all of Edmonton. This project took us 5 years and $1 million. And in 2006, on the day of the final World Cup soccer, which was between Italy and Germany, we held our grand reopening of Giovanni Caboto Park. Several thousand people came out to the opening, well, actually for the soccer game. The grand opening was crazy with joyous celebration when Italy won the World Cup that day. Our kids who were 14 and 10 and 9 still talk about how hard they worked running the concessions with other children in the neighborhood and how much fun they had. This is community building. I will bring a fresh perspective, new energy to City Council, making Northlands a priority, and ask the tough questions of mismanagement of $72.8 million and why Northlands came out with Vision 2020 in 2016 when they knew the Oilers were going to Rogers Place in 2009. I will take steps forward towards dismantling the legislation which Northland is under and free the city of Edmonton from the power of Northlands over its people. Once these administrative issues are dealt with, we can have a more transparent conversation about the future of Northlands. Secondly, I'm committed to ending homelessness by supporting a citywide response to homelessness, which the City Council passed in the summer. Thirdly, I will strengthen and streamline the planning department of the city so that people are not met with barriers when starting up new businesses and building new homes. Fourthly, I will work closely with the recommendation from End Poverty and will implement affordable early learning and childcare spaces in subsidized and affordable housing locations. Finally, I will ensure that infill in our mature neighborhoods happens in a meaningful manner, taking into consideration the characters of our neighborhoods. A vote for me, Liz John West, means a vote for fresh perspective and new energy on City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Clywett.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Matthew Clywett. I'm the eldest son of a Dutchman and a Cree woman from Moosonee. I'm a husband of 13 years, a youth worker, an academic counselor, and a one-time blender of industrial chemicals. This evening, I'm a candidate for Ward 7. Our time is short here tonight, so I'm going to get to the meat of this conversation. My values center on community and responsibility. So what does that mean for crime and taxes? Now, there's other questions I could answer, and I'm sure I will, but I think the answer to these will give you the best idea of who I am. So what am I going to do to keep you safe? I'll start by explaining what keeps me safe. My neighbors. I am protected by the man across the alley who's always washing his car. I'm protected by my side neighbors at their backyard fire pits. And I'm protected by the lady across the street who watches her kids play on the sidewalk. I am protected by my community. The first thing I would do to fight crime would be to promote walkable community space. I would upgrade our sidewalks and crosswalks, and I'd provide lower fees and better service to make it easier to start a local business. I'd like to see more people on the streets walking and more local places to walk to. I would also see a return to community policing and more proactive conversations with police about what we see going on. The next thing I would do to combat crime would be to better support people struggling with addictions. Something many people don't realize is that if I have a $70,000 a year addiction, I need to steal close to $700,000 in goods to support it. This is because stolen property is not resold for anywhere close to its original value. This sort of crime is not deterred by the police or by prosecution. The people committing these crimes are slowly killing themselves. They're living in the right now. Services like assisted living facilities and managed drug and alcohol programs would be an excellent way to combat this source of crime. Looking after addicts and the homeless is both the right thing to do and the practical thing to do. Now let's talk about taxes. Your taxes are rising because we're building an increasingly expensive city. Urban sprawl is cheap to build, but costs much more to service than it pays in property taxes. It cannot be properly or economically serviced by the city, and the costs of this lack of planning are subsidized by your tax dollars. This is aside from the traffic congestion, pollution, and wasted prime farmland these developments cause. Before we grow outward any further, we need to focus on refilling the gaps in the mature city. We can do that without ruining your neighborhoods. We can refill Northlands with low-rise housing, and we can make it possible to develop our many vacant lots. When a developer has to push through a variance, sit on a property for 6 months or more waiting for a permit, and then has to upgrade water mains and fire hydrants and back alleys, only the highest of high-rise condos is going to make any money. If we want to see reasonable infill, we need to provide the clarity, the service, and the infrastructure to make that possible. So, these are my ideas for fighting crime and taxes. If you like my values and the way I think, I would love to serve you at City Hall. Thank you for listening. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
Folks, I'm so grateful that you're taking the time to make an informed choice in this election. To those of you who came out on this chilly evening, and to those of you sitting at home watching online, thank you. There's 6 people sitting here asking you to elect them to be the next councillor for Ward 7. And I think you should choose me. Why? Well, let's start with this. Mr. Katarina has been our councillor for the last 10 years, and he just read his campaign brochure to you. Not only that, it's the exact same brochure that he produced in 2007, and I think after 10 years, we deserve some fresh ideas. There is nothing that changed in that brochure except that he's dropped his long-fought battle about the city centre airport. Mr. Katarina showed his commitment to us when 14 months after he was re-elected, he jumped on the Progressive Conservative slate and ran against Darren Billis in a failed bid to become MLA for Beverly Clairview. He ran on a platform that would have seen us all paying a whole lot more for a whole lot less. And had he won, we'd have been paying for a by-election too. Mr. Katarina has the worst attendance record on City Council, and when he does show up, he's often ill-prepared. When Council met this past April to discuss the future of Northlands, the councillor for Ward 7 was nowhere to be found. He didn't show up. And folks, we deserve better. My name is Mimi Williams, and I've worked for decades to make life better for Edmontonians. Through thousands of hours and years as a volunteer in organizations like the Edmonton School Food Lunch Program, which I helped grow 20 years ago, to HIV Edmonton, or my stints on my community league executives, I've never stopped believing in or fighting for the communities that make Ward 7 great. Through my work as a political commentator and writer, I'm the only person sitting in front of you this evening who raised the red flag about the Coliseum in Northlands when talks about a downtown arena first started a decade ago. I don't talk about that to refight lost battles. I talk about that to point out that there's a person on this ballot with foresight. There's a person on the ballot who looks at the long-term ramifications of chasing the shiny ball. The world is changing. The way we work and live and play is changing. And we need to build a city for the future, not a city based on the social and economic models of the past. Part of that is recognizing that Edmonton has changed. It's not the same place I landed in 1986, and it's not the same place that many of you were born in. We need a council that looks like the city we are today. We need to elect a council that includes people who have relied on the services the city provides. We need to elect a council that's prepared to engage and respond to the citizens it serves every single day, not just for a few months before election day every 4 years. Mr. Katarina's been talking about problems around crime and disorder for a decade. Well, here's the thing. Last month, we had 2 murders at one problem property in less than a week. Repeated calls to the city about this house have gone unheeded. Nobody, not the Problem Property Task Force or the Community Safety Branch or the police or our councillor, appear to be taking these very serious concerns seriously. This isn't a problem exclusive to Norwood or Alberta Avenue. The people who live by that old Safeway on 66th Street that isn't actually vacant are pretty concerned about the problem property on the north side of 118th Avenue that keeps them awake almost every single night. Community and safety and problems around disorder shouldn't be about a clever soundbite for an election campaign. It's an everyday fact of life for a lot of people in Ward 7, and we're fed up. The city has the tools at its disposal to fight these properties, and it's about time we started to use them. As your councillor, I will work very hard to promote locally owned independent businesses and build vibrant communities where people feel safe walking and cycling and pushing a stroller, just as safe as they do inside of a vehicle. I will work hard on initiatives like Vision Zero and Racism-Free Edmonton, and declaring ourselves a truth and reconciliation city in ways that go beyond hashtags, in ways that actually have meaning. Over these past several months, it's been my pleasure to talk to thousands of you about our city, about this place we call home together. I've heard your concerns about traffic safety, sidewalks, and cuts to public transit. I've heard your views about bike lanes. Oh boy, have I heard your views about bike lanes. And I've listened, like I always have and like I always will. My name is Mimi Williams, and it would be my honor to serve you as your next councillor for Ward 7, and I look forward to your questions this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now that we've had this opening comments and more information from your candidates, it's time to move to the question and answer session. So I would invite, while you're proceeding up to the mic, those of you that have questions, just a few reminders. 30 seconds to state your question. State your question as clearly and concisely as possible. Be brief, add context, close with your question. If you have another question, please go to the back of the line so others will have a turn, because this line could get long. And focus on issues relevant to municipal government and questions that all candidates can respond to. And we will give our candidates 1 minute each to respond and rotate. And in the interest of time, I would ask all of you to please hold your applause to responses until all the candidates have answered the question. Thank you. Please start.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for declaring and working hard to be candidates. I have a question about being politicians. Some very lofty and interesting proposals mentioned by a number of you. You took ownership of them. How are you going to convince your council colleagues and the mayor that your ideas are the best and you can overwhelm whatever they are thinking about the same kinds of ideas?
So could you clarify the question, please?
Sure. What I'm trying to say is, how do you convince your buddies on council that your bright ideas are going to work?
Candidate Katarina to start. Could you repeat the question again for one of our candidates,
Sure.
please?
How are you going to work with your colleague councillors to ensure that the ideas that you have, that you own, will work for the city with them supporting your ideas?
Thank you. Perfect.
I tried 3 times. Did one of them work?
Perfect. Thank you. Candidate Katarina, would you please start?
Thank you very much for the question, and that actually is a good question. There are 13 people that have to make a decision, and you need 7 of them to agree with you in order to move any project forward. And over the last 3 terms, I've learned how to work with, compromise, in order for all of us to sort of win our projects here in the city of Edmonton. And there's a time and place, and we've seen in Ward 7 that time and again, whether it's projects, whether it's renewal, whether it's security, I have had a good relationship with my council colleagues. I understand the system, I understand the process, and certainly that is a big consideration in moving things forward. There are some things that I might not agree with, but at the end of the day, it takes 7 out of 13 in order to move a project forward.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Andy?
Please respond.
Yeah. And I would like to extra mention, if I am elected, I don't forget my colleagues. I will looking for advisors just to be around, surrounding me, so they also will be part of my future work. If you were talking about issue with already elected council, of course, this is a normal procedure. I need to be always with them, make friends, but this is not means I will have different opinion on issue. Also, I can raise hands or I can not. I will be the first council who will, before make any decision, ask community, leader of the community, if I'm going to raise my hands or not on certain issue. So I believe there will be a little bit tough work for the city, but I am very peaceful man. I'm not violent. I always look for...
Thank you, Candidate Gudanowski.
Thank you.
Candidate John West.
Thank you for your question. I have sat on numerous different committees where we come from various different backgrounds, and we have to work together to come to a common understanding and a common goal. It's not an unfamiliar ground for me, and what we have done on a constant basis is not only do we gather together and meet together on a regular basis, but we always have an eye on where are we going. If we agree with where we're going, regardless of how we get there, through relationship building, through networking, we constantly talk and go together towards that. But we need to know where are we going first and identify that goal. The process may vary from each one of us, but we will get there together in relationship with one another. Thank you.
Candidate Clywett.
Thank you. I work with teenagers for a living. Demanding respect and obedience doesn't work that well for me. What I am good at is building relationships, earning respect, and gaining cooperation. I listen better than most. I'm not quick to anger or to judge, and I'm patient. These are the traits that make me good at what I do for a living, and this is how I'd work with my fellow council members.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
Well, I think that the answer to your question is twofold. I come to the table armed with research and facts and data. I'm very driven by evidence as well as passion. So you need to convince, as Mr. Katarina said, you need to convince 6 other councillors that what you're saying is correct and get them to vote your way. There's a couple of ways of doing that, through reason and evidence and political pressure. So I also think that there's room to have the public engaged in the decisions that were being made. Sometimes other councillors might need to be nudged by their constituents to see the light. Having said all that, I don't think I have all the answers. So it might be through dialogue with my colleagues that I discover that maybe I'm not right. It's important we have those conversations before we make decisions for our citizens. And that's what I will commit to do.
Thank you. And finally, candidate Andrejczyk.
Hi, Jim. Being a counselor, I think it's about representing your ward, but it's also being about being a team player and building consensus. There's no role of official opposition on city council. I've already got relationships with administration and council, And I've got a track record of building consensus on some really tough issues in the city. So I think it's about building consensus. It's about representing the ward that you are tasked to represent, but it's also about having those relationships and building consensus that way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to all the candidates. Next question, please.
My name is Hans Smits, and I live in the Virginia Park area. My question is about affordable housing. And the question is how City Council and you as a City Councilor can take leadership on increasing the commitment of a city like Edmonton to affordable housing. As an example, there are a couple projects happening in Vancouver and Toronto where new developments are required to give 25% of the development to affordable housing. I think currently in Edmonton it's around 5%. So that's a big issue. The second part of that question is how you stand for protecting and making available public lands in Edmonton so there can be land can be devoted to housing that can be affordable for more people.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
questions. So are we good on this, candidates? We're clear? Great. Candidate Gudanowski, would you please start?
Can clarify the
So if I
question.
clarify the question,
You
first
just
part is
talk
on
lot
affordable
of,
housing.
So I don't clearly.
Okay, the first part of the question is, can the city require a greater percentage of development if there's large-scale developments, that more of it is dedicated to affordable housing than is the current practice? And the second part of the question is to make available public lands that could be make affordable housing possible.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Yes, I can try. You mean you're talking community housing?
It could take lots of forms. It would be housing that is would start at a lower cost, so more people could afford to purchase or rent housing than is currently available to them.
Yes, maybe I will try at least. I'm not well acquainted yet with this subject, but I can try. We know how housing in Edmonton is expensive. People practically have no even chance to buy the house. And we have in Edmonton 25,000 people who never reach even income tax 40,000, potential customer for any project. No. So I have my bunch, a lot of idea how to raise again, bring the housing projects all over the Edmonton on the right track. So you're supposed to read my program, which is on Facebook, about housing, but
Thank you, candidate.
maybe I
Gudanowski.
just stop because
Thank you.
I need to be well acquainted with your question.
Thank you. Candidate John West.
Great question. I think we need to do numerous things. One being the city of Edmonton does need help from the provincial and federal government in financial assistance so we can do this affordable housing. The other part is, I'm not sure if some of you have heard in the news, about a month ago we developed a Community Development Corporation, which is a partnership with the City of Edmonton and the Edmonton Community Foundation, who is looking at public lands that the city will give $10 million worth of public land in the inner city, which the private sector can develop. So your suggestion is already happening. That just happened about a month ago. And it's in partnership with just End Poverty as well as Edmonton Community Foundation. And the city will be giving $10 million worth of land, and Edmonton Community Foundation will be giving $10 million worth of financing as well.
Thank you. Candidate Clywett.
Thank you. There's a couple of ways to address affordable housing. I mean, one is of course subsidized housing, but most affordable housing is not subsidized. It's just housing that people can afford. And for that, we need housing that can be constructed affordably, and we need more housing types. So I would make it easier to have more low-rise buildings, and I'd have it easier to put in a basement suite or a backyard garden suite, so that there'd be more housing types and a larger market of housing. For public lands, there are some schools that have recently been closed, and some of those lands could be converted to housing. Maybe not the whole property, but part of it.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
So what you're talking about is called inclusionary zoning, and I'm really excited about it. Toronto's picked it up, Vancouver has, and it's happening in a lot of cities in the States and in Europe. So what it does is it sets aside a certain percentage that must be affordable in every multiple unit development that is approved by council. And what's great about it is it eliminates NIMBYism because it happens in every development across the city. It reduces the stigmatization of living in affordable housing because every unit looks the same and people can't tell the difference. And it spreads it out, as I said, all across the city. So our problem is we don't stick to our guns. So when City Council just approved the Allard Tower downtown, for example, had they stuck to their 10% formula, that would have meant about 70 units of affordable housing. Instead, they let the developer hand them a check for $1 million, which will not build but a few units of affordable housing. So I support the concept and will be a strong proponent of it. Developers don't like it, so I think I'm on the right track, to be honest.
Thank you. Candidate Andrzejczyk.
There's no question that making housing more attainable is a critical need, and not just in Ward 7. We actually have the second highest rate of affordable housing in the city, just right behind downtown. The well-being and economic prosperity of our neighborhoods depend on it. Now, the province has committed $12 billion over the next 5 years, so I think the answer to your question is that I would look forward to working with my council colleagues around, looking at affordable housing and spread it equal distribution in a fair and equitable way across the city.
Candidate Katarina.
Thank you, and City Council for the past many years has embraced the idea of affordable non-market housing and assisted. Certainly the city itself, we contribute somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million a year to housing, even though it's a provincial jurisdiction. We have made that commitment and we will continue to do so. As far as the percentage that you asked, specifically the question, the policy is now that 5% of new development be allocated for affordable housing, and normally it's 85% of the value of the 5% of the units. And certainly the distribution of housing in all forms needs to be absorbed or embraced by all areas of the city, and that is sometimes why the concern when the concentration in particular neighborhoods gets to a certain point.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. And this will be the last question before intermission, so I'd invite you to remember your order in line when we come back.
My name is Brendan Van Alstyne. I'm the president of Alberta Avenue Community League. My question is for all the candidates, though I ask it with apologies to Councillor Katarina, since I know that you and your family are involved in owning and operating a number of such businesses on 118th Avenue, and that in practice, voting on any such motion would be a conflict of interest for you. Recognizing that businesses such as pawn shops and predatory lenders, including payday loan and cash stores, have been proven, when present in high concentrations, to be detrimental to and have hindered the revitalization of a number of Edmonton's main streets, including 118th Avenue. If elected, would you support mandatory minimum spacing between such businesses, similar to that currently in place for liquor stores and massage parlors? Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate John West.
I love your question, because am I on? Because I too live in Alberta Avenue and I am sick and tired. I call it the triple P: pawn shops, pharmacies, and I'm thinking of pot shops coming our way, plus the A, which is the L for liquor stores. I absolutely would want to see what is that word? Enough of all the pawn shops that is there, for sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Candidate Clywait.
Yes, I would support that. I would support spacing between those businesses. I'm particularly not a fan of payday loan places. I think they're very predatory on vulnerable parts of our community. So yes, I would support that.
Candidate Williams.
Yes.
Candidate Andrzejczyk.
Great question. No, I like to make decisions based on evidence, and this is something that the City of Edmonton's doing right now. You suggested body rub centers, you suggested liquor stores. It's a conversation that has not been broadened to this. I think predatory retails is a major issue throughout the ward. We have to be looking at not just the location of singular institutions, but how they work in conjunction with one another. It's a bigger issue, though. This is what happens when you just let small business happen to a community. I think what we need is a champion who will seek out the Swiss to goes of the world and the autos of the world, and I want to be that champion here for the ward. You know, small business is the lifeblood of our community. It's a whole quarter of my platform, but it is an exceptional question.
Thank you. Candidate Katarina.
Thank you. And part of that I would agree with, and certainly my work with Swiss to Go and Auto in getting them established, I'm proud of. But the premise of your question that I have a conflict of interest, I am not in business. I have no business interests here in the City of Edmonton. I have no property interests except my home here in the City of Edmonton. So the premise that you started this question with, I think, is a little bit untruthful. But in saying that, we have been working on pawn shop distances, separation distances for many years. There are distances with liquor stores, as you know, that was introduced, the 500 meters, and within school areas and children playing. So with all of these things, we have to be considerate of what we populate our communities with, and anything that would provide a negative influence, certainly we are concerned with, but there are also a lot of legalities that you have to consider, that your wishes aren't necessarily legal in the process that we have here in this country.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Yes, generally we know everybody. We need practically in our Ward 7 every type of business. People practically, when I pass so many of them, don't have a job. Every small business we know is the base of big business. I have in my program mentioned clearly, I will discuss with banks and other businesses, huge businesses, to just come to our community and try to do anything to create wonderful just profit for the community. So practically, if we're talking about also a liquor store, yes, I want the stores far away and close practically about 6 p.m. And that's all I can say. I am just supporting every possible business small in our community.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. And now we'll break for a 10-minute intermission, so we'll be returning here about 11 minutes after 8. There is water and coffee in the back. Please help yourself. The information booth out front. Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to ask you to wait a little longer because I'm going to take a question from Twitter first. So hang in. Okay. So our first question is from Twitter this evening. And this is the question. How will you encourage families to live and stay in mature communities in Edmonton? How will you encourage families to live and stay in mature communities in Edmonton? And we'll start with candidate Clywett.
Okay. Well, I would encourage families to stay and grow in mature neighborhoods by providing a variety of housing that they can live in, not just high-rise condos, but multi-room units and, of course, independent houses, and by preserving our parkland and our mature schools, by keeping them open and keeping these facilities available so people can still stay here in the ward and won't have to leave to raise a family someplace far away. So that's what I would do. That and of course, keep on working towards redeveloping our mature neighborhoods so there's a variety of services and businesses available to them so they can live here and be happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Williams.
I'm a big fan of mature neighborhoods. I first bought my home in 1994 in Alberta Avenue, and I currently live in Highlands. I like where the trees touch. I like to live where the trees touch. So I think what we need to do, for one, is we need to move an awful lot of seniors out of their single-family homes and into more appropriate housing. And I've heard that from them. I'm not talking about warehousing seniors, I'm talking about giving them choices. A lot of seniors are in their single-family homes because they want to stay in their community, but there's no place for them to go. I think we've got a great opportunity. I've already actually spoken with members of the provincial government and school boards about the 3 new surplus school sites we're going to have coming on board in the next couple of years, and we need to pursue development in those areas, I think, so that seniors can stay, age in place, and free up their home for a young family to move in. And that's how we will create vibrant and multi-generational communities.
Thank you. Candidate Andrzejczyk.
I think it's about being loud and proud about all these core communities offer young families. I know Catherine and I wouldn't have it any other way. It's also about building confidence in the safety of our communities and some of the issues that we struggle with and really getting to work on that. And finally, it's just about having more housing options. You know, Ward 7, we have 70% less buildings that are over 5 stories. We have 35% more single-family dwelling homes. So we really need to look at our housing stock. We need to look at housing that will invite families into our community and focusing on safety and really just being more outspoken by all the possibility that, core communities, but particularly Ward 7 offers.
Thank you. Candidate Katarina.
Thank you. And Ward 7 certainly has absolutely everything that Edmontonians embrace these days, with services, closeness to LRT, given that we've had the oldest line almost 40 years now, the eclectic mix of housing and different housing types, and the developments that we have, such as Alberta Avenue and Beverly. These are all attributes and assets that people have embraced, and we are sort of the next group of communities that are closest to downtown, and again, with those services being front and center for most young families to come forward into these mature communities. And certainly working with school boards is extremely important. We have had some success with Norwood School, for example, explaining to them the development in Ward 7 and allowing them to stay open for an additional 2 years a number of years ago, which now they're thriving and flourishing, which is attracting more people to the area.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
And to keep just all families, and we know as a family, as ordinary people, we always stay there where we have a good job, for example. When we have feeling good, If the family is together, dad is working, mama is working, kids in school, school is very close, the community has nice recreation center. We have 24 communities generally, only few of them has community centers really with swimming pool. And just create something which will keep, like we keep family together, so then people stay. We know the most important is to be sure there are safety everywhere. That's why almost 4 years I'm doing campaign on Facebook, how to eliminate crime to zero. Federal government already read this, but they cannot introduce these tools because can just take out of
Thank
work
you.
so many.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Candidate John West.
Jeff and I have raised our 3 daughters in Macaulay, Cromdale, and now in Alberta Avenue. So we definitely know what it means to bring young families into the community, and we've been there for 27 years. One of the things that we have found was parks were critical in raising families, senior homes were critical, education opportunities, and community building. Initiatives like Abundant Community that just happened a few years ago, as well as currently I just heard of at Beacon Heights, the Man Shed. All those different opportunities build strong communities that really make people want to stay and be involved. And so for me, building strong communities is critical to having young families stay in the community.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Now to our mic. Please pose your question.
In regards to the gendered wage gap, how will you address women's income and employment inequality generally, as well as how income inequality is more pronounced for women of racialized communities?
Thank you. We'll start with candidate Williams.
Wow, I just gave a speech about this on Sunday. I should have brought that one. I've worked very hard on anti-racism, anti-sexism, and equality issues for decades in this city. I think that the way we address them is to, first of all, acknowledge them. I think that it's going to be important, or it is important, for us to have people on council with lived experiences in poverty, and that understand that we're not all affected by decisions in the same way. Women, people of color, trans folks, disabled folks, they've got it hard. And we need to have a council, when we make decisions, that thinks about the people who are the least advantaged amongst us. Because you know what? The people who are most advantaged, they'll always be okay. We've got to have that lens on at all time, and I can assure you that I will.
Thank you. Candidate Andreychuk.
Well, I think you have to first acknowledge that you have a problem, and I think to acknowledge it, to keep it front of mind, and to support the existing programming initiatives like the WAVE Committee, and I know we have representatives from here today.
Thank you. Candidate Katerina.
Thank you for that question. And the city of Edmonton, over the last number of years, certainly made every effort to improve the equity, whether it's pay equity, whether it's opportunities, be it women, less fortunate, disabled. None of that matters. Everyone with the city of Edmonton, through policy, with the support of council, is going in that direction, has gone in that direction, and will continue to make sure that everything is equitable regardless of circumstances.
Thank you. Candidate Kudanowski.
Yes, I discovered we have in our community 5 communities who has very difficult to actually join rest of the community of Canada, okay? We understand, like women, disabled women, and there is much more. When you walk 10 years ago, you never saw much people, disabled people. Now, practically every minute, you see so many people with walker walking, even young. We know, I know myself, I say myself, if I'm elected, probably I will be the first one who will be immediately, very often visit those people and ask for any issue. After them, so family and elderly people. So there's a lot of job to do to be sure they become part of our community, fully useful. And we work together, especially with those who look like they're supposed to never touch anything.
Thank you. Candidate John West.
Most of my career, as well as living in the Alberta Avenue and Macaulay, I have worked with marginalized people, and definitely I see the challenges. And even you asking the question raises the issue. And I often think we cannot change what we don't acknowledge. And so thank you for asking that. I think we continue to talk about it. We continue to look at policies that leave marginalized people behind, and we continue to push it forward by having conversations and changing some of the legislation and policies that oppress many of us. Thank you.
Candidate Clywett.
Thank you. Well, the first thing I would do would be to spend some more time consulting with diverse communities. There's a lot about being a woman of color I probably don't know. I would support more education through the library and education through community organizations. I would support those organizations in the good work that they are already doing. And I would do anything possible to provide more affordable daycare. I think childcare is something that keeps a lot of women out of the workforce, and that's something that is an essential service that we should be providing. So that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Thank you for your question. Are we good?
Hi. My question is about money, of course. I am a taxpayer, a citizen, and of course, money is always talked about in many ways. So we have problem that in our city that sometimes how could you all work together if you guys get elected as a council? Well, I did see the problem. I did hear about one of the questioner that.
Could you please get to your question, ma'am?
Yeah, my question is, when you get elected, right? Would you work and let people know what exactly what's cost and how long it takes this project? Because there's so much problem what we have after the project is halfway or is done. There's always a problem, and the problem is nobody tell us or nobody.
So, ma'am, what is the question?
My question is this: when you get elected as a politician, would you be pleased the money that we pay? Can you use them at what we need? Like we already have so much.
How will you spend the taxpayers' dollars?
The taxpayer money, you make sure, like I said, we have LRT don't work.
Is the question, how would you best spend taxpayers' dollars?
That's right.
Thank you very much for the question. And we'll move to candidate Andrejchuk to start.
I would, of course, exercise discretion. You know, the city only gets about 8 cents on the dollar of your tax dollars. Everyone's going to talk about discretion, but I think we should be putting the emphasis on other streams of revenue. The city charter is going to allow us to look at things like fuel tax and hotel tax. So it's a question of using discretion, making informed decisions, but it's also just alleviating the burden of one stream of revenue, which is property taxes.
Thank you. Candidate Katarina.
Thank you. And for your tax dollar, absolutely right that it's about 8 cents that the municipalities get. We have one stream of taxation, and that's property tax, which is an antiquated system of doing it. With the city charters being discussed right now that I have been part of and involved with my work with the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association, those are the types of things we're looking at. But we don't want new taxes additional taxes above. We want to be able to share in the taxes of the province and of the federal government, just as we do in gas tax. So those are the discussions going on now, that we need help from both other levels of government. We don't want to impose additional new taxes on the citizens of this city.
Thank you. Candidate Gudnowski.
The most important thing is I discover a bunch of community. When I try to call community liga presidents, they no exist. We need to rebuild the community first to communicate well. When we rebuild the community, every Christmas, before Christmas, like in other city across Canada, every member of the community receives from me flyer or pamphlet informing him how the community work and how we deal with our taxpayer money, with your money. Everyone. I'm waiting so many years. Never nobody bring me from the city any pamphlet or flyer and explain me what's the money are. I'm also little member of community Laval in Montreal. Mayor every year give us flyer and pamphlet and councils and explain every penny what we do. It's wonderful moment. I will do the same here for the community. You will know everything what we do in the city.
Thank you. Candidate John West.
I think for me, I think that's a great question for many of us as taxpayers. And I think it's critical that we have an accountability base on the amount of money that is being spent and a transparent process, that we as taxpayers know where the money is going. And that is probably why I am quite shocked at the fact that $72 million with the Northlands has poofed. That's our money. That's our taxpayers' money. And so I'd like to see some transparency and accountability for that particular situation as well. Thank you.
Candidate Clywett.
I think it's important that we provide value for taxpayers' money. I think that's the least we can do. I think that doing that, though, we have to keep in mind providing good value for the money. I don't think that the lowest bidder is always the best option. I think to help balance our finances, we should focus on trying to get more money out of the land we already have in the city. We have a lot of gravel parking lots that pay very little in property taxes. And if we had anything on them beside an unlicensed parking lot, we could get some property tax money out of that. And it would involve not a whole lot of extra resources on behalf of the city to get money out of that. So promoting developing those properties and getting some more taxes out of them would help balance the books.
Candidate Williams.
We used to have a councillor, Rose Rosenberger, who liked to use the term that council should not be micromanaging things. I'm going to suggest that we've moved so beyond micromanagement that we actually saw planners move an entire LRT station across the street and nobody noticed. That happened with the Nate LRT station. So two things. We need councillors that are attentive and to oversee what our administration's doing. And the second thing is it's about priorities. So while our council and our councillor was voting two years ago to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on a hockey arena, they voted, a motion was put forward to retain the low-income seniors benefit that helped seniors stay in their home. It only cost $1.4 million, and our councillor voted against that while he was voting to build a hockey arena for hockey players. So I think it's a matter of diligence and priorities, and I will offer you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Next question, please.
I live in Beverly. I have one quick question. What are the two main issues you think are facing women in Edmonton today? And if you were elected, how would you address these issues?
Thanks for such a concise question. And we'll start with candidate Katerina.
Thank you. Two main issues facing women, that's how I understand the question. Certainly equity is one of the issues in making sure that pay equity is applied everywhere in our city. and certainly the City of Edmonton is committed to that. What we can also do is make sure that the contractors that we bring in to do work for us also adhere to some of the standards that we place, just like anything else, whether it's health and safety, the way they do their work, that their policy on women equity and positions in their companies are considered as well too as part of our procurement process if people want to work under contract for the city.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Yes, and if you were talking about equality of the women, it's so funny picture when you stand up in front of the Capital Region Housing Corporation and you see 2-3 women leaving the building and crying. I tell you, I am father of 5 women at home. I know what my wife feels. She was ready to pack the suitcase and leave in Canada when she arrived. No, we don't treat women the same way. Here we need to work hard, and City Council is, as a community daddy we call, has power to explain everybody, included big company, big bosses, and everybody who deal with the city, respect for everyone. Otherwise, no business here. That will be this way. How you can participate in everyday life if you don't have a job or other things. Mother's supposed to be always ready for everything.
Candidate John West.
2 main things that come to my mind immediately is poverty and childcare. And how I would really look at those 2 issues is looking at work programs as well as career initiatives and back to school, different types of programs. And we have some of them called DEXA, does some of that work as well. But with that, I also want to see childcare, affordable childcare that is easily accessible versus somewhere in the boonies where you take the children, you take them to childcare, then you take the transit and go to your class or to work. So I'd like those 2 coming together with regards to these issues for women.
Candidate Clywett.
Well, I agree with Liz on this one. I would support better access to education and training and child care, so that women can, of course, attend those educations and those trainings. I would support anything the city can do to support those efforts.
Candidate Williams.
I think my answer is twofold. Women remain economically disadvantaged, and not just if you're a woman of color, a woman who's disabled, a trans woman, then you're going to be even more economically disadvantaged. And I think we clearly have a lack of political representation when we've got 1 woman out of 13 on a city council representing all folks. That's not acceptable. I'm concerned about the alarming number of senior women living in poverty, and that's an issue that's getting graver and graver. And I'm concerned that our city seems to forget these people when they make decisions like cutting public transit on Sundays. I met Claire in Delwood, who no longer gets to go out with her friends to church. Social isolation is a huge problem, and I think that we're supposed to try to make things better for people instead of making it worse, and that's unfortunately what we've been doing.
Candidate Andrzejczyk.
I'm kind of stunned that I'm about to respond to this because it is 2017, but I would say poverty and safety. And I think some of the ways that we can get at that are income inequality, childcare, and the City of Edmonton is currently engaged in some very exciting work with the United Nations. We're one of the few pilot cities embarking on that. There's a great deal of promise there.
Thank you, candidates.
Thank you, candidates. Next, a quick Twitter question. Will you commit to banning the practice of police carding? Candidates, will you commit to banning the practice of police carding? And we'll start with candidate Gudanowski.
Again, you need to repeat me the question.
Will you commit to banning the practice of police carding? Police carding is a practice, as I understand it, that relates to identifying people based on discriminatory grounds, racial, profiling, etc., or that is the suggestion?
Maybe even if I don't catch up right away, I explain you clearly exactly what you probably expecting from me. I'm doing almost 4 years on social media campaign how to eliminate crime to zero. I'm explaining clearly there is possible eliminate crime tremendously. But when I send the program to the federal and provincial, some of the member, they say we cannot introduce those tools because sooner or later, thousands of police officers can lose job. 1,000 people who work in justice system will lose job. We need crime. We need little crime all the time because at least those people who work in justice system will have job, money to pay mortgage, have money for food and everything. No, it's wrong.
Candidate John West.
Stopping people based on, by the police based on race and gender and sexual orientation is totally unacceptable. And so if that is occurring, absolutely I would be against that.
Yes, I would support a ban on carding. I don't get carded. I also don't get stopped for jaywalking or followed around a drugstore. But I understand a lot of people are. I would love to have a random conversation with a police officer. It doesn't happen nearly often enough. We could talk about the things I see in the neighborhood. We could talk about what we saw on TV last week. But I think being asked who I am and do I have my ID and where am I going isn't going to be a very productive conversation. And I think these conversations reduce the credibility of the police and their ability to work in the community. I think this is a poor practice, and I think this is bad policing. So yes, I would support a ban on carding.
Candidate Williams.
Absolutely. And there's no if here. This is happening. We've seen the data. Black Lives Matter Edmonton has brought that forward. CBC has reported it. There's no if. Edmonton police are stopping Black men and First Nations, Indigenous, and Métis women at far disproportionate numbers than they are reflected in the population. It's clearly based on race. It doesn't prevent crime. What we're talking about is people being pulled over, or even if they're just walking, their ID being entered into a database, even though they're under suspicion of absolutely nothing. We don't know who that data is shared with, and it needs to stop. I am sick of hearing kids like my sons and their neighbors and their friends making jokes about being pulled over for driving while Indian or walking while Black. It needs to stop, and I will certainly continue to speak out against it as I have in the past. I will not back down. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Andrzejczyk.
Racism in any form is wrong, full stop. I am deeply troubled when I've heard some of the accounts that have come out over the past months. I'm a social worker and I spent over a decade working in partnership with police. I see an external review as an opportunity to bring all parties to the table. I think that this has opened up a really important conversation. The review has to be inclusive, it has to be meaningful. I think it's clear that we can do better. It's just a matter of determining how we do that together.
Candidate Katarina.
Thank you, and discrimination certainly is intolerable. And we in the city of Edmonton, I think residents, government, and the police service have come to that conclusion altogether. We all agree. I have complete trust in Chief Connect to run his EPS service and department. He has shown to be a great leader. I also have trust in the Police Commission, who is directly in charge of our EPS service. And many people might not realize City Council cannot direct police to do virtually anything. We can make suggestions, but we have no authority over the police service with the Police Service Act, and that's through the Police Commission, and that's there for a purpose and a reason that it doesn't become political.
Thank you. Your candidates. Thank you for those answers. Now we're approaching 20 to 9. So I think we have time for 3 questions. So those of you lined up, I apologize, and if we can be as quick as possible, that would be wonderful. Please ask your question.
I doubt very much if I'm the only one here. I'm sure there's others who have lived beside the hell of a problem home. We've had problem houses in this neighborhood for a long time, and I spent 4.5 years dealing with that and got terrific response from EPS, from SAGE, from SCAN, and where everything stopped was with the city. So I would like to know when, why, and how this hasn't been done, and what are you going to do to finally get this moving?
Thank you. Candidate John West.
I live right near the house where the 2 murders just happened. And so it's very close to me. I'm just one house. And that house has been a problem forever. We have phoned, we have a young family with a child living across the street. What will I do? I will continue to phone the police. I need to continue to do that, be vigilant in looking at that house as a problem house. I have true drug houses on my block. Both are problem houses. And so, it is something that I have advocated for years, and nothing has happened. And my hope is when I get on city council, I want to look at that issue. It is a big problem.
Candidate Clywett.
Thank you. Problem houses are usually violating several laws we already have. I would be in favor of fining them, and then escalating that fine, and then escalating that fine, and then escalating that fine, until the owner of that house is eventually broke, and we own that house. I think it's going to require a bit of belligerence. Thank you.
Candidate Williams.
Yeah, we've got a number of tools at our disposal. You mentioned some of them, and I don't know what it is that it's going to take. I was door knocking on the street where those 2 murders occurred on the Sunday evening. The first one was the following Wednesday. And people were pointing at that house and saying, I've called 65 times. The last time I called the police, they told me I should move. Well, no, that is not a response that our officials should be telling the good neighbors that we've got, that they need to move. No, what needs to happen is we need to shut down those properties. We know who these people are. We know who owns them. We need to use the powers that we've got through zoning. They're operating illegal rooming houses, slap them with fines. But we can also move to seize under the Municipal Government Act, and we can work with our Solicitor General to do so. I think it's about time. I made the comment that day, it's going to take a death. I had no idea there'd be 2. And then we had another one in Beverly, and you can be sure that that person, once the investigation unfolds, probably came from a problem property too. So it is time that we clean up, and it's a matter of political will, not a lack of tools.
Candidate Adrechuk.
These are a blight in our neighborhood. This is an issue that I know well, and I know exactly what it's going to take. What we do not need is more of the same. Ward 7 has the 2nd highest crime rate in the city, and we've had that for a long time. Edmonton's also leading the nation in terms of homicides. A lot of those come back to these problem properties. You could throw every cop in the city that you want at these. It's not going to solve the problem, and it's demoralizing for our police. I'm advocating for something that I'm calling the sunshine approach. There's information sheets at the back. The idea is we cast a light on those who pose risk to our community. It's worked in Vancouver. The idea is if you have outstanding violations, if you are gambling with the safety of our community, we publish the name, we publish the outstanding violations, and we publish the address. In Vancouver, they saw a 75% reduction in problem properties as a result of doing so. That is 7,200 problem properties off the list, not $1 of enforcement. I think that's the road forward.
Candidate Katarina.
Certainly, the challenge in Ward 7 is large, but this exists throughout the entire city with problem properties. There are different levels of problem properties and different issues. Certainly our legal system and certainly property rights and all the legalities really are a hindrance to the things that we're trying to do. And knowing the number or the hundreds of calls that we take yearly on this particular issue in particular, we are no stranger stranger to it. We are trying to change, whether it's through bylaw or whether it's through cooperation with other agencies, whether it's health and safety and all the others, to work together on these units. If you know that in Ward 7, actually a number of years ago, we closed down most bad properties in the entire city. It was over 200 properties that were closed, but it takes a long time and it takes cooperation from all of us working within the rules that we have to work with.
Candidate Gudanowski.
I'm sure 100%. I don't want any statistic in our Ward 7, like we have every day in newspaper, on the news. I don't want those almost 8,000 over domestic violence last year in Edmonton. 40 suicide. No. There will be no statistic. As a council, not mean I'm not a policeman in this city. I will do the job. I go to this house first and rescue my life, find out why is the crime there. Maybe those people need help. Maybe those people need right away attention and maybe a little love. That's why we can send the police always. But remember, as a daddy of the community, I need to know what my kid's doing in those houses when it's trouble. Close my home, just been already one homicide. This is impossible. There will be no statistic.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. And we only have time for 2 more questions, so I'm sorry for the... Please proceed.
My name is Leslie. I've lived in the Highlands in the same location for 25 years. Over the past years, I've written to Mr. Caterina on several occasions with clear, concise, point-by-point concerns. I have only once in those years received a one-liner saying, we've received your information, we will look into it.
Could you please ask your question?
I'm not happy. I would like to know from all the potential councillors what you will do how you will communicate with your constituents to show that you listen to their concerns and their interests and respect the time that they take to put their thoughts down on paper.
Thank you.
Because every one comment represents at least
100. So
100.
the question is, how will you communicate with your constituents?
Yes.
Thank you. Candidate Klywit, please start.
Oh, okay. Well, I would communicate by responding, first of all, regardless of your question. And regardless of whether or not I had an answer, the least I could do would be to respond and say, well, let me look into that. I'll get back to you. I don't know everything, but here's what I do know. Maybe I can't solve everything, but here's what I can solve. Here's what I can do for you. Or, you know what? That's a provincial thing. Let me get you in touch with the right people. But at the very least, I would either respond to your question or put you in touch with somebody who could respond to your question. So that's how I would handle your inquiry. Thank you.
Candidate Williams.
You know, I've heard this story so many times at the doors over these past several months as I've been out canvassing. I'm astounded that an elected representative would not respond to one of their constituents. I'm flabbergasted. You might not always have the answer that they are expecting, but you always need to respond. I've heard from folks saying, my questions always are, well, have you called your counselor? And what I'm hearing back is, I've given up. And that's extremely disheartening. Nobody should be giving up in this city. If you don't get an answer at 311, and if you don't get an answer as you go through the chain, it's your counselor's job to get you those answers. And I can commit to you that I will be responsive, I will be on the job, and you might not like what the answer is, but you will always get an answer from me.
Candidate Andrzejczyk.
Ward 7 is my home. I'm going to make 3 commitments to you. Catherine and I commit to raising our family in this community. We will be present in this community, and I will continually look at ways of modernizing the way that we engage with citizens. This is a young city. This is an increasingly young city. We need to think beyond just door knocking. Maybe I'm just tired of that right now. We need to think beyond door knocking. We think to modernize the way that we connect with citizens. So I will commit to living and raising our family in Ward 7. I will commit to being present in our communities. And I will commit to always being on top of new ways to connect with you and your family.
Candidate Katarina.
Thank you, and I take great pride in the last 10 years in dealing with constituents. Certainly, there might be a number that might fall through the cracks for some odd reason, but we log everything, every phone call, and every email that comes into our office. So certainly, if there is someone there that has not received a response, I would love to have your name, and I will respond if we haven't. But I am really proud of the fact of the work that we've done with constituents on a day-to-day basis, and there's thousands of calls a year that we respond to.
Candidate Gudnowski.
Yes, I rebuilt first our community. I discovered after when I meet those thousands of people, I rebuilt first Community Liga, a lot of new presidents. And then in my program, anybody wants to go on Facebook, please. On chapter 2 is stated in 37 statements how we're supposed to work as a politician and local politician. You learn and you will be judge me after and my colleagues in the future how we're supposed to work with community. That's also lesson for other politicians from any level, provincial or federal. I did this for memory of election 2013 when I ran.
Candidate John West.
I will respond to phone calls and emails in a timely manner. In my previous job, I would respond to every single calls that came in and emails, and I had a 24-hour policy. I would also be involved in where the community gathers. If there are coffee shops that people are hanging out in the community, I'd like to go and be with them and hear what they're talking about. I'd also like to attend community league meetings on a regular basis to hear what are the issues on the ground level. What are the issues that's happening? I want to hear about it, and I want to take that to City Council. And of course, I'll continue to engage in community functions as well. Again, to hear, my background is community development, so this is critical for me. I'm passionate about it. I want to hear from you, and I want to respond to the needs that are coming towards me.
Thank you. Your candidates. We have time for one more very quick question, because I'm encroaching on the closing remarks time, so please ask your question.
Good evening, candidates. I have a question for you. I've heard a lot about Highlands. I've heard a lot about Alberta Avenue, and I've heard a lot about Northlands, but I haven't heard very much about Beverly and Rundle Park. I've lived in that area for almost 50 years. We need a recreation center. We have many seniors. We need people who can go to these places and exercise in the winter as well as in the summer. We want to keep active. We want to live in our own homes. What will you do for us? Our stores are closing. They're becoming ghost towns.
Thank you. So what will you do for the community of Beverly?
Yes.
Candidate Williams, please start. Candidate Williams?
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. That is a concern, and sorry we didn't, I thought I mentioned Beverly, but I might have skipped over it, but there's a lot of communities in Ward 7, and certainly Beverly, Abbotsfield, and Rundle are underserved when it comes to recreational facilities. I am particularly concerned, we've got the highest population of seniors in this city, in Ward 7, and I am concerned about, as I've mentioned earlier, isolation and lack of programming and recreational opportunities. So I will certainly commit that when it comes to budget time, that those issues are front and center. It's just as important, if not more important, that our seniors are served as it is that our children are served. And both of those things are very, very important to me.
Candidate Andrzejczyk.
I know what you're up against because we chatted on your doorstep. And I also know that because I've chatted with a lot of your neighbors. You're experiencing things that you've only since associated with downtown until recently. You're seeing the effects of crime and disorder happen in your community, things that you haven't experienced before. What you need, I believe, is to enhance the community policing in the area. You need a redevelopment of Abbotsfield Mall, and you need to keep an eye on our senior population in that area. We have 38% more folks in our community that are above the age of 70. We have to be very attentive to that. We need to encourage housing so seniors can age in space. That's a major gap right now.
Candidate Katarina.
Thank you, and I'm glad that it was mentioned. Abbotsfield Mall has been just sold. I've been working with the new owners for the past year and convincing them to come to this part of the city in Beverly, and that has actually happened. Now they're coming to your business association and to your neighborhood to ask you what you would like to see there because of the revitalization of that particular area. And certainly there have been things happening. The ARC, Abbotsfield Rec Center was developed. We have plans for the new library next to that site. ACT down in Rundle is experiencing renovations at this point in time. So there are many things that are positive about Beverly. Certainly the displacement that's been happening because of the new arena downtown, that was anticipated, and Beverly has been the recipient of that displacement, and we are working to address that now, along with people that you would know, Cornell and others in the community. That is a topic of discussion all the time.
Thank you. Candidate Gudanowski.
Yes, I want to just mention clearly, there is certain process. Some issue require just attention, just city. Some issue require province. Housing belong to the province too. So a lot of things. The most important things, your community must first know who is the council, who is the daddy of the community. I will be there. I will be drinking coffee with you guys very often if I'm elected. I always bring some sweet. I never come to any house with empty hands. And then we will work on every issue what you mentioned me immediately. I will just find out which issue to who supposed to be supplied. I will be the guy who will be watching the other person really work on this issue. So that's all what I can say.
Candidate John West.
Thank you for that question. Some of my toughest questions was from Beverly, and so I appreciate that. And so in Beverly and Rundle, there's a real strong sense of identity and strong sense of community. And so if there's a need for it, I'm saying let's try and make it happen. Let's do some community consultation. Let's see how we can raise the money. Let's see if there's grants out there. Let's see what the government can do for us, and let's make it happen.
Thank you. I would support lower fees and better service to make it easier to start a small business along 118, to reopen some of those closed businesses. For some reason, it's profitable right now to raise the rent on a building to the point that a business can't function there. There's a lot of businesses that have been put out of business by rising rent that still are vacant, and I would like to look into incentives to open those again. I'd also like to provide better transit out that way. I used to take the bus to Rundle Park, and I'd cross it, and then cross the Strathcona Science Park, and then go to my job on 17th Street. And I know the transit out that way is not what it should be. So those would be my first priorities in helping Beverly.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. So we now have a few moments, 1 minute each from each candidate for closing remarks. We're starting with candidate Williams.
Folks, if there's one thing you need to know about me, know this. I will never give up. I've never given up on myself, I never give up on the people I care about, and I will never give up working to make this place we live in together better. From the time my family moved into this ward 23 years ago, I've never given up on our communities, and I'm proud of the work that we've done together to make it better. There are hundreds, thousands of people across this ward working to effect positive change in their communities, and I look forward to working with each and every one of them as councillor. I want to work with you to celebrate our diversity, improve citizen engagement, so that we can come together to find solutions to tackle head-on our most difficult challenges. We live in the best ward in this city. From the River Valley to recreational facilities to thriving small businesses, we've got it all, and it can only get better. What we need is a councillor who is committed to work hard and show up, prepared to put the interests of the people in this ward first. My name is Mimi Williams, and I would be honored to serve as your city councillor. Thank you.
Candidate Clywett.
I listen better than most. I'm also much more reliable and consistent. This is important because the young people I work with expect to be let down, and they're very quick to point out when you've said one thing and done another. These are some of the traits that make me good at what I do for a living, and these are the traits I would use to serve you at City Hall. I stand by my work, I stand by my word, and I would stand with you. Thank you, and good night.
Candidate John West.
Thank you for coming out on this cold fall evening. Your vote, you should vote for me because I want to help build a city that empowers people to create a vibrant and inclusive community for all. I'm a leader who is informed and knowledgeable, supports people to get involved, and inspires people to create change in their own communities. I will ensure that Northlands is a high priority for redevelopment, create opportunities for small businesses to thrive. I will make certain that thoughtful infill occurs. Finally, I'm committed to ending homelessness in Edmonton. I and my husband Jeff have chosen to live in Ward 7 as a place to raise our 3 daughters. Edmonton is a great place to live with exciting opportunities. A vote for me means a vote for fresh perspective and new energy to City Council. Thank you.
Candidate Gudanowski.
When I am elected, if you need help, call me. My, like I say, personal phone will be open to the public. First time in history of Edmonton. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 4 years. I already prepare myself to deal with all kind of issue, to help you with municipal issue, provincial issue, federal issue, family issue, personal issue, much more. Police issue, social issue. I want you to, all of you, if I become your council, become my friends, very close friends. You see me very often in front of your house, waiting for coffee with sweets. So, remember me, please call if I'm elected.
Thank you. Candidate Katarina.
Thank you. I want to take this opportunity for the closing to thank all of you for being here tonight, certainly, but all constituents of Ward 7 for the last 10 years and their cooperation and their help. Doing this is difficult on your own. You need the community to be involved, and I want to thank the communities of Northmount, Kildare, Glengarry, Dellwood, Killarney, Baldwin, Delton, Elmwood Park, Alberta Avenue, Eastwood, Parkdale, Cromdale, Mount Rose, Virginia Park, Highlands, Newton, Bergman, Beacon Heights, Beverly Heights, Abbotsfield, Rundle Heights. All these communities belong to Ward 7. They all have different issues and unique concerns to their own particular area, and certainly all of them have been wonderful in the support that they've shown and the commitment to their communities and their involvement. So thank you to all those communities.
Thank you. Candidate Andrzejczyk.
There's something happening in Ward 7. I felt it over a year ago when I announced my intentions to run for City Council and started knocking on doors. It's the sense that the status quo is not good enough anymore. The people of Ward 7 are ready, and I am ready to work with you. This is my home, and I am ferociously hungry. I have the commitment, I have the experience, and I have the passion needed to guide the road ahead. I'm already doing a job that makes a difference. Tonight, I'm looking to you for the mandate to do a lot more. Your support is not something that I take for granted. You've heard a lot tonight, and now you have a decision to make. On October 16th, vote Anderchuk, because there truly is work to do in our community. Thank you for being part of this critical conversation this evening.
Thank you, everyone. This brings tonight's formal session to a close. I hope you will forgive me for sneaking 5 minutes out of the meet and greet to continue some questions and answers. A few things before we move there. Thank you, candidates, for your thoughtful participation, and audience and those watching online for being a part of this forum and actively participating in this election process. And thanks St. Bernadette Elementary School, home of the Bisons, for offering this facility to us, and our ASL folks, Tracy and Aaron, and all the Edmonton election staff and our sound folks and everyone, thank you very much for helping to put this together. Before heading, thank you. Before heading to speak with the candidates, October 16th is Election Day. Advanced voting is available October 4th to 13th. Special ballots are available at edmonton.ca/election for those not able to get to a voting station. And you can pick up more detailed information at the information table Karen is manning on the way out. And if our team starts putting chairs away, don't let that deter you for your meet and greet, but I would ask that you start moving for the door around 20:25 after. Thanks everyone for your participation, and good night.